Psychotechnology Live. Woo!
Jed's hands.
So welcome to Psychotechnology Live. This is Psychotechnology Live.
Woo.
But what does it mean this is that we are?
We are.
This week's episode is on identity. Not identity politics, just identity.
Right. So we just did what is self, right?
Right.
And I want to link back and be like, okay, one aspect of self is the way that self goes, I am a psychotechnologist.
I am a psychotechnologist.
Ooh.
I identify that way.
Right.
It's part of my identity.
Right. So what is this thing that is identity? That
is a good question. Yeah.
We get attached to, and interestingly, it's not always concrete, but we get attached to some sort of, it's a subtle or very subtle structure, like I am a vegan. I'm not vegan. I am a vegan. I'm a libertarian. I am a,
like, I'm not a vegan. That's also part of my identity.
Oh yes, yeah. Interestingly, I feel the need to say I'm not a vegan, even though I used it as an example. I don't know why I beat up the vegans so hard. No, wait, I do. It's because I hung out with them for a while and I saw the ways in which they were being especially frustrating. And then anyway, vegans.
Yeah, I think making fun of vegans seems like punching down to me. So I'd rather not do
it. There's something good there in veganism, and there's something that feels exhaustingly over controlling, or, oh man, I like, in my head I have this map of all of the ways that veganism can branch into insanely over the top beliefs, like the vegan. So we had the pandemic, right? And so there's the vegans who branched into the like anti-government, and then there's the vegans that branched into the like the like environment, the natural vegans, like don't take the vaccine, it's not natural.
Yeah.
And they're like, don't listen to the grand narrative because the government's not doing enough to support veganism or to make vaccines safe, or to, when they tell us what to do, we shouldn't trust them. Anyway, so there's the veganism sort of like branched into these other forms of
right. So they kind of like spread out, and they all feel very strongly about their interpretation of veganism.
Right. So all the quiet vegans, all the people who are just passively being vegan, and occasionally, if their body feels like it, eating like a bite of meat here or there, and very rarely, they're not protesting, they're not arguing for veganism, they're just living their lives. And so the only veganism we see is the vocal veganism.
I think that's true of all groups, pretty much. It's like you're always going to see the loudest people.
It's true of
obnoxious people.
Right. We see the vocal side of every ism.
Right. So to me, that's sort of a natural way of identity self-regulating, in that, like, if you have a group of people, and you know, like, we're psychotechnologists, and as far as I know, we're the only people that identify that way. So everyone is like pretty sane here-ish. Like, we're not too obnoxious.
All the psychotechnologists are sane people I know.
Yeah, they're all sane, they're all cool people, they're all like hangoutable. But like, if we expanded to being like bigger, like if we had 1,000 people, then there would be like some obnoxiousness.
Right. Some of them would be obnoxious, some of them would be quiet, some of them would have other weird beliefs that hang around nearby, some of them wouldn't. And would be like, get a life, don't you have any other interests?
Right. And it would be like, we'd start to develop like an internal culture, maybe. And, you know, which to a certain extent we have, because like we do hang out a lot in these similar, in like spaces that are welcoming to psychotechnologists.
Well, even between us, we have different cultures. We have different identities.
Yeah.
I find I do more of the explaining thing, and you do more of the like curious discovery thing.
I do explaining things also.
You do as well, yes, of course. And I do curious discovery things as well. But we have like seats that we sit in some way.
Yeah, I think that's like our dynamic is like that.
Right. And so, but there's a,
I don't explain a lot because I think people like just don't want to listen to me explain stuff.
right. So I explain a lot because I'm like, people need context or else they're going to be like, what on earth?
Oh yeah.
So I'm like, better give them context, better give them context.
That's another thing of like of how far are you, like how much context are you giving people?
Mm,
Because like to a certain extent you want to trust people that they can figure out what's going on. Like you don't want to talk down to your audience.
right.
And on the other hand, you don't want to just have totally internal jargon because they're just not going to understand what's going on.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, it's like, yeah, I mean that's a whole one. But to me, like a lot of this comes down to like I imagine talking to my past self or myself that didn't spend the time like learning all these things
Mm.
and or like spent my time doing other things in life that are also important. And then that brings us to the question of what is this me? What is this myself, like this alternate me that I'm referring to? And I think that's identity. Is like how do we identify like what is it us and what is other almost. It's like where you're drawing that line.
I want to name here also archetypes being kind of close to identity as well, being more proposed to be more like a universal type of identity. So if you have the archetype of a king, then someone can lead into their kingliness as a personal identity in appeal to the archetype.
Yeah.
And the proposal is that the archetypes are more like universal human conscious patterns. And so kingliness is something that everyone can kind of start to understand and try on or be more kingly or less kingly or
Yeah, I
healthy
see
king.
archetypes as like more like niches or something
Mm,
where like situations will often like if you have like very like strong structures, then like these things are going to arise. Like you're going to have, hierarchies, and then the person on the
right.
top is noble and like just and that, and like that's their job. And the outsider is going to be much more like a trickster or something.
Or an outcast or like, yeah.
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 So
People
definitely the
are,
strength of a dynamic creates the strength of its opposing dynamic.
yeah. And I think when you have much more like fluid decentralization kind of thing, like archetypes are still there, but they're less like they don't get confused with identity.
Mm,
So sometimes you'll be like the caring mother, but that's not your who you are, like your identity, your role in life. It's
mm.
a thing that you do or a body embodiment that you exist as or a way of being.
I mean, so this makes me wonder as we move into a more dense society, like we live together in close quarters, are we going to see more extreme archetypes or less extreme archetypes? Were archetypes more possible when we were all spread out
Yeah, that's a
population
good
wise?
question.
And so the trickster would travel to another town and he could be a trickster again from scratch because
Yeah,
people hadn't gotten used to him. Or now when we have like such a density and we bump up against each other all the time, is the trickster driven to extremes more often?
I, I like so I think it's more reflective of like again like the structures. So it depends like if you have a much more like stable structure, like let's say like religion or tradition, right? Like where it's like, oh, it's tradition, like this is how we do it, and we do it because that's how we do it. Like they're very stable over time, and then the niches show up. But when everything is like changing all the time, and people are fluid and they're able to move around and do things, they you get to see that you're not the archetype. Like you don't confuse the role you're playing with the identity that you are.
Mm.
And I also see that as much healthier.
Mm.
Um,
Interesting.
yeah. So like, yeah, like, and I think actually like this is like a big one with the gender stuff.
Mm.
Is
Gender identity, of course.
yeah, gender identity is like people, which I didn't realize until recently, that people were told like this is how, like this is your gender, and so this is your role, and then they don't fit that role, and they're like, okay, well, I guess gender is not like, and then whatever, like they have a whole struggle with gender
So
versus.
I have opinions in this area. I have a theory that the other gender always seems better defined than your gender as a like
Grass is
consequence.
always greener kind of thing.
Say again.
Like grass is always greener.
Um, so it
Like
doesn't necessarily need to be defined as greener. It just is better defined by because it is other. Because
oh, okay.
because it's something we can see from the outside, and it is something that is other to us. Like if I'm the man gender, right? So I take the man position and I see the like the strong men, and then I see the soft men, and I see the like, oh, sometimes the men are soft and sometimes they're strong, right? And so on my side, the one that I belong to is fluid and confusing. Whereas when I look at the other one, that I see them
Mm,
as better defined as like, oh yeah, there's the strong women and then there's the weak women, or the like soft women. And that one is like, oh yeah, obviously that's a strong one and that's a weak one. But I feel like I have a fluidity to me that I could be
yeah.
either way. And so mine is very, and I don't feel like I fit in my one because I'm weakly defined, because I'm very confused, because sometimes I'm strong and sometimes I'm weak. Whereas if I and so there's a problem here that the other one always feels better defined.
Yeah, it's like your tribe, the other tribe is all the same, and your tribe is all different.
Right, right. Especially because I know my tribe very well and I know the nuance, but I don't know
Yeah,
the other one because I'm not there. And
yeah,
so they're just all them.
yeah. Like growing up, like in the Orthodox, like
Mm,
depending on like even like the tie or the kind
right.
of hat,
And I
like
can, from a distance, be like, the Orthodox are all the same, right?
they
And
look
you're
all the
like,
same. To
no
me, they're
way.
all like no, no, that guy is like this, and that guy is like that, and you can tell a lot just by the way people dress.
Right,
Like yeah.
right. So,
Um,
and I suspect there's something of a universal here that the other group always feels more defined than the self group, the identity belonging group. And I may be wrong. Maybe this is something to me that other people feel like the ones they belong to are better defined than the other group. Like maybe the vegans are like,
well, I think it
no,
does.
vegans
Yeah.
make sense and everyone else is irrational. Whereas,
Well, yeah, if you're the kind of person that thinks vegans make sense and everyone else is rational, you should probably join the vegan tribe, because you're
hmm,
gonna like you're gonna get along better, like you're gonna have more friends, you're
right.
gonna.
But maybe this is an experience that I have had, that every time I join a group, that what feels like a solid identity starts to dissolve and be confusing. And
Yeah.
is this local to me, or is this more
No, no,
universal?
this happens to me and this happens to everyone.
Right. I
Um,
don't know. I feel like I should ask more people. Like again, is
yeah, I
there
mean, you could, yeah, but
is there someone who's like, every time I join an identity, I feel like I'm stronger because I get to be a fitness guy, and now I'm like, oh yeah, I'm with the fitness pros. Fitness is great.
yeah, well, I think
Or
I think that happens at first, where it's like
well, I
like
don't
I'll be
even get
with the
that.
rational, huh? Huh?
I don't get that. I get the like cautious step into the like, I guess I should try fitnessing. And then I get the
Yeah.
like, it's nuanced because sometimes I'm sore and tired and I don't get to exercise, and I'm not really the central category of fitness person. And so my identity is a bit bleh. But it's someone else going like, yeah, I'm just a fitness guy. That's my thing. I'm a fitness. They're in the center of the
Some people
category.
are like that. Yeah, some people they'll wear that identity as themselves.
Mm.
And I do recommend it to a certain extent. Like I think it is, like if you're really feeling it, like just, and like something's really speaking to you, like just go for it, right? Just like, I think there is a thing of like getting caught up, and then like getting confused and thinking like, oh, I'm a fitness bro, but like maybe
But
this
how do I
work
be a
life
gentle
is
soul when I'm a fitness bro? Oh no.
yeah.
How do I be a hippie when I'm a fitness bro? What a crisis of identity.
Yeah, or vegan, right? This is vegan,
Yeah. Oh
strong,
no.
right? Like, how do you be a vegan and a strong man at the same time, right? Like, how does
Right.
that work?
Right. You got to put extra emphasis on getting the right vitamins and nutrients through, and even fight the absorption limits and that sort of thing to be
Right, like
fitness
it's
bro.
a lot of it's a lot of work, but then when you get this like this intersection, and it just like if it feels really charged and really live for you, then like that's awesome. Right? You're getting these like intersection of two paradigms that you love.
Mm. So
Um,
I was saying I have this problem that it feels like I'm hitting a new uh relationship to identity over the last couple of days, where so my ability to sit here and be like, I have never, every time I've tried on an identity, it has felt a bit off. Now I'm sitting here questioning that, being like, oh, is it because I never really tried it on properly?
yeah, I
And I
want to
had one
explore
foot
this.
out the door, or and so now, like, what if I try on an identity more strongly? Like, is that gonna be an interesting adventure to examine?
Yeah,
And obviously,
I
I'm believing I'm in a like post identity whatever Keegan more than four, because four is the identity one and five is the like fluid self. But of course, when growing up, we often leave things
yeah. But then
behind.
you're in that identity. You're like, I'm a Keegan 5. I don't do
Well,
identity.
like I
Who I
feel like I
am.
am beyond it, but it does feel like I've left something behind. There's something incomplete here with identities that I'm going to now go and explore and nuance a bit better. There's something about it that's quite interesting to me.
What? Tell me more. What is interesting? Like, what's pulling you? What's the attractor point, or what's the need?
I don't know right now. It's a mystery. It's a I'm reading, so I just read a book on feminism. I'm reading a book on Alexander Lowen's
Oh,
bioenergetics.
so you read. We can film the audience. You read. What is it, Sarah?
Sarah Ahmed's. I read about half of the. Uh, let me get the title. So one of them was something about happiness, and let me get the actual title.
Yeah. So it's Sarah.
So there's
Sarah Ahmed.
The Promise of
Was it
Happiness.
queer phenomenology?
I didn't know. I read 60% of Living a Feminist Life and uh 20% of The Promise of Happiness. Uh, and this is
Okay.
in the last few days. And then
So
I've
I
also read
started.
Bioenergetics by Alexander Lowen, who is his own therapeutic paradigm called bioenergetics, who followed on from Reichian therapy, and he's a from the fork of Reichian was a big school, and then Reich got in trouble for talking about some what was declared hocus pocus basically by
I
the
don't know anything.
justice system. He named something called Argon energy, which was his conceptualization of
Okay, so slow down. So who's this guy? Name
okay
drop.
Reich. Gosh, what was his first name? Mr. Reich of Reichian therapy
Okay.
was German.
It's the
He
Fourth Reich, right?
huh?
I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
It's a very bad joke.
right. He invented a type of therapy which started exploring some sort of energy. And of course, if you go back to episode 15, we talk a lot about energy.
Okay, so
Um,
he started therapy that explored energy.
right.
What kind of energy?
So he named a type of energy called argon energy, which sort of maps to chi or prana, depending on which other Chinese or Indian tradition you follow. But
So did I
essentially,
just say argon? Argon, like the noble gas?
no, Oregon, O-R, like
Oh,
the state.
Oregon. Okay.
Argon, Aragonite, uh, or Oregon energy, including uh, attempting to like look. He formed the belief that such an energy existed to the extent that he tried to start building devices that could capture and tap and
Uh-huh.
uh, re-energize people in this energetic quality. And of
This is
course,
giving me like Scientology vibes.
well, no, he tried to obviously do his engineering scientific side on an energy that is very subtle and hard to pin down. And so, and he seemed to be he seemed to think he was successful in making devices, and then he tried to sell them, and the FDA sort of shut him down because he was selling devices that couldn't be proven to do things, which is the problem with energy. It's very hard to pin down enough to prove that it's there, even though it certainly feels like it's there to many of the practitioners and people working with it.
Well, I think whatever. Okay, so
Okay.
let's call them early proto psychotechnologists.
Well, he had an entire school of therapy, and in theory, he
Oh,
supported a lot of his patients. One of his main students was Alexander Lowen, who branched into who didn't talks about in this book. He didn't quite like the therapy. He didn't finish. He was incomplete about the conclusions of Reich, and he did Reichian therapy for a while, and effectively did the graduated, like Reich declared him to be done, and he felt like he wasn't done. And so he continued his work and invented what he calls bioenergetic therapy in order to carry on the growth.
bioemotive or just
No,
emotive?
bioenergetic, different. Biomotic is Doug Taran. You see, there's all of these like independent schools of people doing their thought structures and trying to understand it in their own ways. And Doug Tataran is more emotional work. Um, Alexander Lowen seems to have gone into body work, um, like somatics. What we now know is Thomas Hanna invented or named something called somatics, and then passed away in a car crash in the early 90s, and unfortunately didn't get to expand his work, but proposed a therapeutic somatic experience. So really based on the sensations in the body and the sensations that sort of get stuck in the body. And so Alexander Lowen seems to have sort of also looked at the somatic experience, the experience of the body in the sensation, in order to unlock the patterns and to sort of grow freedom and grow various positive pathways from there. And so it's not that Reich was wrong, that Alexander Lowen was wrong, that Thomas Hanna was wrong. They all, from my perspective, seem to start pointing to a very similar thing. We have like Bessel van der Kolk saying, the body keeps the score, the body remembers what happens to it and needs to reprocess it. And some of what these people are doing is either movement forms, so you end up with things like Tai Chi, it starts to move the body to clear their stuff, or like exploring what is stuck in the body and why the body habitually takes certain patterns. So there was this one of the chapters I just read by Alexander Lowen. He started having a slight neck problem, and there was like a pain and an ache, and then he couldn't really solve it, did like massage stuff, and it sort of came back, lasted. So after like a year or so, he was teaching a course, and one of his co-teachers says, let's try it on you. Let's try make you the client in front of the class. And they did some work and unlocked something basically, and found some tension in his neck and in the arch of his foot, and suddenly like everything clicked and unlocked. And there's a longer story, but you'd have to read the book. Pull it out. But essentially he unlocked this pattern where he was feeling trapped or feeling unable to, for whatever reason, have a like head up high posture, and so he was developing this ache, and then after that he was fine and his posture was fine and easy, and he was much better at expressing himself because obviously neck.
He was able to hold his head up high.
Yeah.
Both
And then
metaphorically and literally.
right, that chapter then goes on, and this is an interesting idea. He goes on to talk about the language of the body, and or metaphor around the body. So he really particularly seems to like having your feet on the ground as a metaphor for being stable and responsible. And obviously things like being high is taking your feet off the ground.
Yeah, those things are, I do find those sayings like reflective of the experience.
Right. So if I say like Daniel has a spicy take on something, like it's not about the flavor, but we know we're talking about like it's hot take.
Right, like a hot, or
Daniel
hot
mentioned the Fourth Reich or whatever. That was a spicy take.
That was a joke. No Nazis here.
But that's a spicy take, right? And there's something of an embodied experience of spiciness that language comes out of, which can be a metaphor for our experience.
Yeah.
So I think there's a whole probably a whole nother Psychotechnologies 18 about body language, and not the like your arms body language, but the language of how we speak of bodies.
Yeah. Yeah, and how that reflects like the actual experience of it.
Right. And sends a message of some kind.
Right.
You know,
And then
we've got
how
all
like
of the
how
gut
affects that,
feeling,
yeah.
and we know from certain of these body languages, they mean things. The weight of the world on your shoulders. It means a very particular sensation of like being weighed down in your shoulders.
Yeah. Yeah, like it does, like that feeling does happen to me sometimes, where it feels like I'm carrying too much.
Right. And then you can't stomach it. Like there's a stomach thing there.
The stomach thing, yeah. Like, yeah, I'm starting to develop that more, like the stomach sensations. It's definitely like social, mostly socially or status or something related. Like social or status or something else. Like I'm still feeling into that.
Right. So this book also talked about losing your voice, like losing your social status as a voice losing phenomena.
Oh.
Which
Sometimes with the voices, like I feel like I can't speak. Or like there's something with the speech, and then and then I'm noticing like the situation is happening, and like I feel like I can't say the thing I want to say for whatever reason. Or sometimes I feel like I have to. I have to keep talking because like the silence will come in, and then I don't know, something bad.
Right. So, but let's roll back a few. So
yeah,
identity. Right. So I was reading these books because I am now interested in what if I try on being a feminist, a bioenergeticist, being a psychotechnologist.
Oh, so you're reading these as like a way of like seeing if you want to do identity, like if you want to play in this.
Well, actually, I think I was going to read them anyway, but suddenly when I'm like in reading them, I'm looking at the identity lens of reading them.
And that's popping out to you.
Yeah.
This came out of our last conversation, right?
Yeah, like, offline conversation. Yeah.
Offline, which I like those ones as well, because then we can just jargon away and we don't have to explain everything. Yeah, so I had a Friday night dinner. I have this new friend that I made, and let's say she came over, and we've been like talking like crazy, like really vibing well, and she thinks that I'm queer, which is interesting.
That's an identity, right? What do you mean by queer when you say queer identity?
Right, and so I can't really defend that. So for me, like she was very convincing, and I
want to go ahead and point out it's kind of rude to give someone else an identity, like to call someone a concrete object thing. Like
in general, I agree with you.
You are a small kid, like you don't want to do that. That little kid's not gonna like that.
Yeah, in general, you got to be really, especially in this day and age, you got to be really careful how you identify people. But
once people self-identify,
I don't know, like
then you can be
like it was within the vibes, and that's what we were doing. And like I guess I could have gone like offended or whatever, but I preferred to not. Like it was more interesting to like try it on and see if this is correct. Like is she correct?
So you have the like complete willingness to just try on an identity, and see I immediately hit resistance when I try an identity.
Oh really?
I think so.
Yeah, because I kind of threw that at you because I'm like, hey, maybe you're. I was like rolling off that, like we were also.
And I went like, what? Like, huh?
So then I was like really feeling like I was like.
I went no, like no.
And then I just like threw out that identity at you, like, hey, maybe you're queer too here. And I'm like seeing it like come at you, and you're like, no, I don't want to be in this box.
Like what? It's well, first of all, perceiving it as a box, right? Whereas sometimes the stepping stone through identity is more like it feels very freeing because there's something unacknowledged.
That's the thing. Because I think with the boxes, is there more space on the inside or on the outside? Right?
Boy, have I got news for you. They're both infinite if you choose to
Yeah, but
expand them.
whatever, like
No, it's
lots
seriously,
of things are infinite. That doesn't mean they're all the same size.
uh, kind of. I think that they are equally as infinite as the amount of time that you're willing to put towards them. You can
So
continue to
let's say
nuance and
that's true.
expand them with depth, depending
Yeah,
on how much
let's say
time.
that's true, but then it's like, well, what do I want?
Right.
Right. So if it's the same, then which one do I want?
Mhm.
And like she made a really good case for me being queer. And
Do you want to
uh,
like put some words to that real quick?
yeah, it's hard. So I don't necessarily like I have to learn more about it before I decide that she's right. And so we're actually setting up a learning session where we're going to study I guess it's like feminist logic or something. I don't know what it would be called, but it's queer phenomenology by Sarah Ahmed.
Mhm.
So like that's the one that we're gonna go. So I don't know what that counts as. Like what I think she's a researcher. I guess like a feminist researcher or something, which is just so foreign to me. Like it's just something like not anything that I would normally.
We're getting
Um,
into a field like sociology or something, where we're really using the words to describe reality and studying the ways in which the words relate to each other quite a lot,
uh,
I think.
yeah, but it's not like so. There's the words, and then there's the idea behind the words.
Mm.
And the thing is, like the idea behind the words, at least what I got out of it, and this is just like I'm at the beginning of my queer exploration journey. So please be nice to me, commenters and stuff.
I still don't know what you mean by queer. You didn't
Rest of
get
the internet. Right. So I'm about to explain it, but I'm not
there.
going to do a good job. So I want to just preface that.
Yeah. Okay.
So so the example Sarah uses is if you have like a mirror at a off angle, and so you look at the world and the whole world looks distorted, right?
Uh,
Or just giving you like an
do you mean
example.
like
Like,
a
the whole
bent
world
piece of
looks
glass or
queer.
at an off angle? Because they're two different things.
Sorry.
It-
No, like the glass is the like flat glass, I think, but it's at like a 45-degree angle.
okay. Yep.
So everything is again, I'm at the beginning, so please guys
Yeah.
don't
Yep.
be, but
Okay. So everything
so
looks like it's coming in at a different angle. Yep.
yeah, so everything is just like the whole world is queer. Like your whole vision, everything you see is it's like
Mhm.
queer. It's just off in like this queer way. And so like the thing I was getting from her was what makes someone queer is that like either like that is how like they see the like they either they see the like the world queer or like in this like off way, or they are queer and like that kind of distorts everything, or they like to do queer things, or they like to see the world queerly.
Right.
And I think like psychotechnologists definitely fall into that, at least fall into that latter category where we're always, we call them lenses, but they're like ways of seeing the world that are just like queer. Like they're not normal, I guess. Like you wouldn't like a lot of the stuff we're seeing, like, oh, if you see the world like this, like no self or acceptance of suffering, even like those things are very, it's like a queer way to live your life, like no identity. Like that's weird. And I'm not being disparaging of all this, but it is things that are just like not, they're just off, like they're not normal. And that doesn't mean that they're bad or anything. Like I'm not trying to be negative towards it. And so the big one for that's queer is like gender queer.
Yeah.
So
Queer seems to apply a lot to gender and sexuality.
yeah, yeah. So that's how we colloquially use it. And
But wait, so I
um
want to go back a bit. So to me, all of these angles, like all of these lenses or uh maybe perspectives on the world. It's not that, well, there's something important here. There's something of like, there's two things. One is, if you can see that your angle is bent, you need to drop down to the true nature of reality underneath the bent reality, underneath the bent angle.
Right, that right there,
And
that's a
move your
clear
base
move.
in. No, it's not. It's a
Okay,
grounding
it's
move.
not technically, it's not
That's one
technically,
thing, right? You need to
but
just return.
it's okay. So it's not a queer move, but it's a move that's done by someone that understands queerness. Like you don't look at
Got to
the
be
you
like
don't look at
very
the angle
cautious
and
around the
say,
word queer here.
where like you're
Everyone,
looking at the mirror. The mirrors are all in like these pointing weird directions, and they're all like bouncing off each other. They're giving you this crazy view of the world, and you're like, don't be here, be somewhere else. And so you move. You go, or you look at the true nature of reality, or truer nature of reality, or something.
so there's one move to like go from the bent mirror to the ground, and then of course you find the ground, and then you realize that there's so many bent mirrors everywhere, and the true nature of reality is to have bent mirrors everywhere as well. And so
right, and then that would be like similar to like accepting your queerness, or accepting that everyone is queer, or the world is queer.
at some point, if everyone's queer, then no one's queer. It's such a leaky ideology that it's
yeah, but
dissolves.
everyone's enlightened, but not everyone's enlightened.
Yes.
So it's the same thing.
And then it's a matter of degrees. And then a matter of useful.
Right, but you're running through this whole process. like you're running through the whole process, like, because like, we like, this is the spiritual way. Like you do the thing, you accept it, and you see how everyone is, you see it in others, and then you accept that it's part of reality, and everyone is this, they're just doing it unconsciously. And then it's like now degrees or whatever, you try to operationalize it, because we still need to describe stuff. But the thing is like, I think there's a lot of people that just haven't, I guess, awakened to queerness, and then there's also a lot of people that.
But there's nothing to awaken to. Gotta keep doing these.
Stop! Yeah, but stop! Don't do that.
Why?
Like, save it for later.
Why? This one seems more true than that one. You're like, other people need to find the queerness. You've created a identity that is.
I haven't created it. I'm exploring a space that already exists, and I'm trying to understand I guess my relationship to it, and things like that, and like, what does it mean? And well, at first I'm trying to understand what it is that they're talking about. Then I'm going to try to understand my relationship with it, see if it fits, and that kind of stuff, and then like go from there. I think.
Again, I feel like I'm inquiring to the fundamental agitation that is going to this one, without why the need to go towards the queer exploration at all.
Well, okay, first off, on a very basic level, because this is potentially like me, that means that there are people that have been studying me, and they could give me lots of insight into myself. And that seems really like, I love it. I love it when people do that. Like when people study me, like if they're studying like biology or medicine, like they're studying the human body, like that's me. If they're studying psychology, like that's my mind, that's me. If they're studying like there's just like so much of like the world of physics, like I'm made out of particles and molecules and stuff, like that's me, and that's my world, and all my friends and everything I like is that. And that just generates so much valuable insight.
So it feels like I just have an allergic reaction. Awesome. Feels like I have an allergic reaction to the identity part. Like you can do all those things without the identity. You can just.
So I'm not at like, when we were doing it, I was at identity, but now that we're not in that space anymore, I'm like, okay, like let's take this seriously and actually like see what are they talking about? Like I have to learn this stuff. Like just because we got high one night doesn't mean that I'm gonna like change my identity. But there is something about identifying this way, because you get to interact with the world differently. If I'm queer, then I can interact with the world differently than if I'm not queer.
Do
And if
you?
I accept that as an identity, then
Wait. What do you mean? In what way?
um,
What new freedoms are found because of the new identity?
this is like starting to border on culture war stuff, so I'm very nervous.
Well, I don't know. I don't know
But yeah, no,
what the
it's a
benefit.
legitimate question. No, it's definitely a legitimate question. It's just okay. So there's a lot of like the woke stuff in the world that doesn't make sense to me.
Mm.
But if what
If
my
you
friend
were
is
more
saying is
queer, would it
true,
make more sense?
then the whole thing makes sense to me now. And like I get wokeism, and actually it's right and is important. Um,
In a way that you're probably not going to do anything different about it.
no, that's not true.
No, you're
Because
going to engage in, get deep into it, fight for the
yeah,
right of the woke.
because I have the
Left.
right of the woke, right? I will be queer and I will be in that gestalt. Like I will be the thing that they're trying to explore.
Hmm.
And if I'm right, then there's a very large overlap between, let's say, queer praxis and psychotechnology.
Right, and there's a question of
And I'll be able to bridge that too.
the
So
same
we'll be
goes
able
for
to,
like to take a different praxis, like the military. And obviously, I'm not American, so I don't even have a good lens on what the praxis of the military is. But you go through training, and there's a strict regimented hierarchy, and this is the way to be.
right.
And
And so
that's a
like
whole.
let's say soldier stuff happens, right? Like I'm very interested in military and I have lots of opinions on it. And I usually don't voice them too much because I'm not a soldier. I have no military experience. And it would be like disrespectful to say there's a lot of things that would just be rude for me to say.
Mhm.
And like to weigh in on opinions, like people can easily just say, oh, do you have military? Like, have you been in the military? Like, what do you know? And then I'll be like,
Right.
well, I'm a guy, I think about things and I have opinions and stuff, but no, I wasn't a
Right.
soldier.
So the military, it could be a praxis as well. Queer could be a praxis,
Right,
like a
right.
whole
Like if I could just, if
philosophy
tomorrow
of
someone's like,
being.
actually, this is what it means to be a soldier and you've been doing it your whole life, then that would be awesome because then I could just like say things like I could be part of
Mm,
that group.
yeah.
But until that happens, yeah, like I'm not part of that group. Though I
Right. So,
respect them very much.
so there's
And
an
I
identity of
wanted to
military.
be. Mhm.
There's an identity of queer. There's an identity of military. There's an identity of
Yeah.
belonging to religion. There's an
Yeah, like the
identity
Jewish
of.
thing, for instance, like there's a lot of stuff I can do. Like I can have opinions on things. I can be like, you're wrong. This is not what your religion says
Mm,
because I'm Jewish. I can't do that to Christians or Muslims or Buddhism is a little bit because like I do practice a lot. But um yeah, like I can do I feel like I can do this to Jews. I can be like, you're wrong. And
because I know.
they have to engage with me as a fellow Jew. They can't engage with me as an outsider and be like, you don't know what you're talking about and hand wave, because I have the right to have an opinion on God like every other Jew.
Right. So identities come with
I'm Jewish,
rights.
I mean. Sorry.
An identity comes with rights.
Yeah, identity comes with rights and privileges and responsibilities as well.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. So a benefit of taking on a identity, because I'm still like, as I've said a few times, I'm in the strongly allergic to identities current experience, and so I'm like, if I take on identities, I could have rights in various ways.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. And I feel weird
what
talking about this on the internet because this could
what
easily be misconstrued. But yeah, like being part of a group gives you rights within that group.
for example, if I took on the victim identity, I would have the right to complain a lot.
Right. You have the right to complain a lot. You have the right to like you
Be
have the right
heard
to,
as a victim,
yeah. And
to
that actually goes a long way, right?
right. Or if I took on and interestingly, so getting into victim, and of course the opposite being like a perpetrator, it seems like there are some identities we want to take on and some we don't. For example,
Right.
no one really wants to be called the perpetrator. People barely want to be called the victim.
So interesting. Yeah. Generally, yeah.
Well,
There are
there's like a
exceptions.
downside to some of these identities as
Yeah,
well
but
as an
there is
upside.
a huge downside to perpetrator identity.
Right. Perpetrator, in theory, upon being called out, has to like uh, retribution, accept retribution for their error of their ways in some way.
Yeah, like you have to do like, yeah, like
Like you
if
may have to
you're,
apologize, or
you can't just show up and be like, hey guys, I'm a perpetrator of violence. Like, and people be like, we don't want you here.
yeah,
Like,
you make me feel unsafe by your existence in
yeah,
this
your
identity.
existence is a crime. Like your existence is bad. Like not like, I know it's weird to like sympathize with perpetrators,
Right.
even this just in this abstract way. But yeah, like they're the outgroup, more or
Well,
less.
so if I like, I take
Most
the object of perpetrate, right? So to perpetrate is to carry out an action. And if that involves no people and no nothing, like I'm planting a tree, right? I carry out the action of I
yeah,
perpetrate the tree
and
planting.
then yeah,
So
and
so
then
there is something in perpetrate, which is just to do something, and then obviously when taken to in relation to other
I feel like
people,
you
like you
switched on
can, huh?
me. You switched on me when I was talking like perpetrator as being the outgroup. I meant like assault perpetrators,
Right.
perpetrators of
So
assault,
when I do something in relation to another
not
person,
perpetrators of like growing trees,
well, I was thinking of
saving the
attacking or
environment.
oppression or
Yeah,
manipulation or but like
something
starting
negative. Yeah,
right, but to perpetrate is just to do. And then obviously to do against another person is to do a negative against another person.
yeah,
But
yeah.
but perpetration at its core has to be just to do things, right? To perpetuate, I guess.
I think
And then of course
you're
we've got the like,
deconstructing all this stuff without like, I see what you're doing here, because you don't want to take on any, you don't want these identities to almost exist, so you're like deconstructing all these identities.
so here's the problem. If I left perpetrator as a negative thing, right? The
Yeah,
only existence of perpetration as an identity is evil, right? Then I've sort of left.
yeah, but you could have, like, there's another way to do that, right? Like you could go, like for me, like when we're talking perpetrators, you're right. Like I was using the word perpetrator to be negative, and perpetrator has this definition, and so really, it's really what I meant to say was perpetrator of like
Bad
bad
stuff.
things or something,
Right. And
right? And now we're sticking with the identity and the
and
bad
so
act.
yes, I agree. Perpetration often leads towards perpetrate bad things. That's the point of the thing. But
Well, and like
identities,
obviously people that perpetrate environmentalism are not bad people. Right,
veganism,
like that, but that's also not what I meant, and I think if one of those people were listening they would understand that that's not what I meant.
right?
but
So
but clarifying it would be to keep the identity alive instead of like deconstructing, which is to like just like like to lose the identity,
right.
which is fine. Like I'm not saying it's bad, but I'm just pointing it out because we are talking about identity.
well, yeah. So I'm trying to take an angle on this. So
Is your
obviously
angle is the mirror at a 45-degree?
I can see you out of the bounce. Yeah. Um, the there's a difficulty here. First of all, giving someone else an identity, like labeling them like you're a bad person, is we talked about it in about episode 3 or 4. That to say, I think it was Daniel, did you know that everyone who wears glasses is a bad person? And of course, Daniel wearing glasses. I perpetuated a violence on Daniel by giving him the idea that
Oh
glass
yeah,
wearing people could be bad and are bad, and
yeah,
and there's a violence there, or that I want to be cautious
yeah,
about, like shoving the identity on him as being potentially an unhealthy thing to do. So from the outside, if I label someone as a perpetrator, there is a violence in labeling from the outside, and so I'm first of all, I want to avoid doing that as much as possible. I don't want to label from the outside,
okay, yeah, okay,
right? But then from the inside, here's the problem though, right? So I look at them from the outside, I'm like, I think they're the perpetrator. And then I ask, or I model internally, if I were them in this moment, how would they be modeling themselves? And if someone has an unhealthy relationship with themselves, maybe they would see themselves as a bad person and give themselves a perpetrator label. But most people and most psychology tries to lean towards positive internal motivation and positive intent. And so the perpetrator is never going to call themselves a perpetrator. They're going to call themselves other things like the
Yeah.
necessitator or something. They felt like it
I
was
think you're
necessary to oppress the others.
you're going something there, and I think I kind of lost you. But yeah, like you when you're saying like to identify someone, like to push an identity on someone
Mhm.
is I don't want to say it is violent. It is like that violence that we were talking about, but
Kind
it
of a violence.
definitely
It's a
could
subtle
be
violence. It's not like a
included
physical violence.
possibly, yeah, like like I'm not saying is, but like most of the other things that are usually with is, were like, yeah, probably like, yeah, you're setting up a scenario in which it could very easily be violence. It's like likely to be.
Mm.
But on the other hand, and I do agree with that for sure. And I definitely try to avoid that with people because you don't know, like you don't know what that means to them
Mhm.
to put on
Right.
that, to put on that
So,
label.
and maybe this is a good opportunity to switch. So instead of perpetrator, let's change the label to you're a hard worker, and as an identity, right? And I can try and give you that, and I could use that in a positive way, and I can be like, wow, Daniel's such a hard worker. Or I could maybe we're in a group of people working and Daniel's working too hard and we're all trying to be lazy. And I'm like, you're a hard worker. And I can use that in a negative way, the same label.
Yeah.
As in like, you're in the out group now. Look at us
Yeah. And
all.
using that in a negative way is terrible.
Is a
Like
violence.
if you're gonna say like someone's a hard worker and you mean that disparagingly, like
That's already, you've already
that's the
made mistakes.
worst. Like you've just like you could easily like mess someone up like that.
There must be a way to be like, hey, you're making us look bad when you work too hard. Can you ease up to do
Yeah,
us
yeah. To say,
some
hey, like,
kindness?
look, this is the scenario that we're in. This is what's expected of people, right? Like, I
Yeah.
think that's much less like
Right. There
less.
would be a way to do it, but obviously using that label or projecting out the negative is potentially a very subtle form of, it's very subtle in
It's
its,
sometimes
but
not
it's
even
still
so
violent.
subtle, but yeah, yeah, it is. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Right. So we've taken this the hard worker label and identity, and we've gone for the okay, if you're like, oh, you're such a hard worker, this is so great in the positive, and that probably wouldn't be a violence because I'm labeling you, but I'm labeling you with the positive.
Right, and
Whereas
even then you want to be careful and stuff, but yeah.
right, and then there's the like from a nonviolent communication perspective, to give you the inherent trait is a dangerous thing because maybe tomorrow you won't be a hard worker. Um, and so I probably want to say something like, I can see that you've done a bunch of hard work right here and now, and I really appreciate you doing that. And then the compliment I've given you is relational to me and temporary and momentary. You're not inherently always a hard worker or, in the flip side, always lazy. But you are, in fact, right now working hard, and I appreciate that in the present moment.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
that's like
so,
a gratitude thing. Yeah.
right,
Like
right,
I'm
right,
grateful for what you're doing right now.
right. So if I take this, what we've done with this identity of hard worker being the good side and the bad side, and I take it back to perpetrator, right? Is there a way in which I can label someone a perpetrator in a positive light?
Yeah. You did earlier.
Right.
Or I
I divided
whatever.
perpetrator back into just
Yeah, like
perpetuating an
sexual
action,
assault perpetrator versus
planting a tree.
environmentalist perpetrator,
Right.
which would be like obviously like perpetrator means the same thing in both cases, but that those identities are very
We don't
different.
usually use it in that way. Use it in this way. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's something here in terms of uh, outwardly labeling identities onto people, and uh, you can do that in ways where it is positive, and it seems bad to do that in ways where it is negatively.
Yeah. I think for this one, yeah, usually people get to pick their own identities.
Mm,
That's sort of what it seems that the standard culture is. Like you can't really label people as identity. Like even like now with like male and female or race or stuff, like it's like you can't really do that.
mm.
And
Right. So there's probably an aspect here of inward identity and outward identity. So identity that we use in relating to ourselves, and identity in which we use in relating outwardly. So when the person says, wow, you're such a hard worker, I may pause and look at myself and be like, am I? Like, looking at my hands going like, where in this blob of human body is the hard worker identity? It doesn't, and it may not feel like it fits. Whereas it may feel like it does fit for someone else. Someone else might
Yeah.
be have been trying to work really hard, and to have been acknowledged for that is very exciting and rewarding for them.
Yeah, I wanted to, yeah. So yeah, like I think those are the two sides, right? Like when you identify someone as a thing, that that could on the one hand be violence of you've put them in this box and this label, and like now they have this identity, and that changes their, like, I guess, agent arena relationship, like their relationship with themselves and the world. On the other hand, if you label correctly and well, it could be very freeing.
Mm.
Right? Like, and I hear this a lot, like a lot of like gay people, when they realize that they're gay, it's actually very freeing.
Right.
Because they were in this state where just things were weird and everything that I didn't know and all this and the other, and then oh, it's just that, like now there's all the schema and like, or scripts and stuff I can follow, or I can listen, or I can explore. Like it
There's ways
changes
to
the
belong.
perspective.
Right.
Yeah. For me, like the neurodivergent stuff really works well
Right.
for me.
I was just about to branch there as well.
Yeah, I realized I should probably be using personal examples.
The diagnostic criteria, right? So we have this
the,
whole
the diagnostic criteria doesn't work for me.
right.
Yeah.
But here's the thing: we have this whole book with, if someone has these traits, then they get this label, or we can give them this label. We can call them an ADHD. We can call them that they have ADHD, or they have an ADHD is a really relatively neutral example. They have ADHD. So if you have these traits, you have ADHD, and then I feel like there's this journey associated with labels, particularly, and I've looked at it from all of my experience playing in the mental health sort of space, which is at first you notice symptoms like I can't seem to keep focus, I can't pay attention, there's some difficulty here, and then you go in search of an explanation, and you try turn off background noises, and you try a couple of solutions, and they work a little bit, and then you're still stuck with this phenomena of I can't seem to concentrate. And then you search further, and eventually you find
you're deconstructing the stuff again. Sorry, I don't know if this is.
There's a path here. There's a path here.
Yeah, and the path avoids the identity part.
No. We're going there. So
Okay.
so you get to here, and you're like, someone's like, maybe you have ADHD. Why don't you go get diagnosed, or something? And you're like, nah, probably not. I don't know. Or you go do some reading, and you like try. You're like, maybe I do, and then you probably go see a practitioner who's qualified to diagnose, and you say, this is what my life is like, and they sort of become the gatekeeper, which is its own problem of like, yes you do, no you don't. And hopefully they're trying not to be the gatekeeper, and they're like just trying to piece together. But you're like, let's say you end up with the label, they're like, yes, red stamp of approval, you in fact do have the phenomena we generally cluster as attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD. And then you have your label, and you're like, yes, finally, I have my label. And the next time someone asks you to do something, you can be like, but I have ADHD. You're like, behold, here is my ADHD certificate. And now that I have it, I am not required to do anything anyone says because I have ADHD. And that goes about as well as it can for about 5 minutes, when you realize that you still live in the world and still have to interface with the world and do stuff.
Yeah, I do think. Yeah, so I think there is a proper relationship with identity.
Right, but we're not done here. So then you are like,
too many things.
There's a couple more steps in this journey, right? So then you're like, you still hand out your certificate, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, and you're like, this is really annoying, until eventually you're handing out the certificate and you're like, this thing never bloody works. Here I am trying to get out of the shit that I don't want to do, and I hand out my ADHD certificate and it just doesn't seem to work, no matter how many times I there's still stuff I don't want to do. And so then you're like, maybe you put it on the shelf, maybe you tear it up and throw it away, maybe you like hide it somewhere, maybe you kind of forget about it, and you're like, well, what are my actual symptoms? Well, every time I sit down at a desk for too long, I can't concentrate. Okay, can I just work around it? And then you start working around it, and you can either keep your identity of ADHD or you can let it go, but you can find the methods to work around it, and then you can get to solving the problem. But there's this whole dance that had to like go through the like identity label thing, and then like go out of the identity label thing that could have, maybe it's sometimes unnecessary, maybe it is
Yeah,
necessary, I don't know.
that is a path.
Yes. But I've
I
seen this so
wouldn't
many
say it's
times, this journey making that people do through the label and then like denial of the label and then like they actually deal with the symptoms and get on with it.
Yeah, so okay, so this is an aspect of identity that I don't.
So I
Yeah,
would say the
this
same,
is, huh?
that same path could be applied to veganism, right? There's some food I don't like, some food I do.
You drink
I
too much
hear
stuff,
about
right?
the
It's like
ethical
eating junk
argument.
food.
I find there's a group of people, I join the group, and then I like become the annoying vegan in my friend group, and then I get tired of it, and then I occasionally, the same journey through identity and back out again.
Yeah, okay. So let me reflect back like the general idea and see if we got it. Because like I don't like this frame at all. I think you're pointing at something that's very true and very important, and this isn't the
Okay,
best way to
hit
conceptualize.
me with this.
Okay, so I think the main thing you're saying is that people often feel that identity matters when it just doesn't. So like the ADHD example, like the person has problems concentrating, let's say, or staying in their seat, and they feel that in your example, and I'm not saying this is true for all ADDs, but in your example, they feel that they can't do anything until they get their diagnosis, and then they can start solving the problem. And I think like that is incorrect. Like if you're having trouble concentrating, you like there are things that you can do to do that, and they're irrespective of whether or not you have a diagnosis. They're irrespective of whether or not you
Have the
have
condition, have the diagnosis, either.
yeah, whether or not you have the label of ADD. So the diagnosis is the thing. Okay, so there's the identity in and of itself, and then there's like a diagnosis, which would mean that like a doctor has said that you have this.
Right.
In our society, having a diagnosis enables you to access medication.
Right. And the medication can change the way that your brain works a little bit temporarily and
medication
confer some benefit. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Whether or not you should use it and how you should use it and stuff is for doctors to say, not for me. But that medication exists and it's useful is obviously true.
Right.
And so there is, right. So there is the identity and there is the diagnosis. Those things are different. So like, for example, I know people that don't identify as, they don't identify as ADD, but they have a diagnosis of ADD because they need the meds. And they can't access the meds without diagnosis, which, by the way, I think is a terrible system. I think people should be allowed to get meds if they need them.
It's tricky. I don't know if I want everyone on amphetamines, if I can.
I don't want everyone on amphetamines, and I don't think most people should be taking them. But I do think everyone, like, let's say, of above a certain age, should be able to access them if they feel they need them. And I don't think they should have to go through the medical system. And in fact, especially with ADD meds are really hard to get because if you have...
There's a gatekeeper phenomena, absolutely.
Huh?
There's a gatekeeper phenomena. Only the registered professional.
That's not even the real problem, right? Because like most doctors, like it's actually not that hard to get. If you don't have ADD, it's very easy to get. If you have ADD, it's very difficult to like set up your appointments and go to them and find them. And like every time you hit a roadblock, like that's an opportunity to lose the thread. And I think it's actually a really terrible, like it's a real shame that, especially something like ADD, where you need the medication to get the medication, is not for everyone, but for a lot of people.
So there is one.
But wait, that's not my real point, though.
Okay, that's not your real point.
That was me just distinguishing the diagnosis from the identity.
There's medicine diagnosis that's more complicated with ADHD. Doesn't exist in the veganism journey, right? Because it's doesn't have the medication, right?
So again, there's a bunch of things, like you can start splitting down identity, right? Because I bet in vegan circles there is identities of vegan that you kind of like need a card carrying vegan to something.
Here's my card.
Status or whatever.
Yeah.
Right. Like I don't like, I've hung out with vegans, but I've never been part of the vegan community. But I bet that there are politics within there, and depending on what your identity is, depends on some factors are
If you
affected.
ever watched Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, um, there in that movie there is a vegan who has superpowers because of their vegan,
Right.
and then I think he wins by feeding them meat or something, and then they get
Yeah,
all
yeah,
the
he had like a
superpowers or
coffee
something.
with like something or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah, and so
contracting at
that's
level 3.
right. Like that's a thing, right? Like we're like, I mean, that's not actually a thing, but the like the identity and then what comes with it, right? So there's like if you're eating vegan to be healthy, it doesn't matter. Like let's say it doesn't matter what your identity is, right? Because you get the healthiness depending on what you eat, not depending on what other people think you eat.
Right.
But there are things that very much are affected by what other people think you
Right.
are. And so I
So
think when you start splitting that down, you have identity as like, how do you identify within the group? Like what we're saying with like the we, the I, we, thou,
I we it's or
the spiral dynamics, the 4 quadrants of the spiral dynamics, right?
quadrants. Quadrants are integral theory, but that's okay.
Integral theory.
Yep.
Integral theory, right? So you have what is your relationship with the group as an identity, and then what is your relationship with yourself?
Yeah.
And I think some people get confused where they think they have to have the relationship of the group in order to have the relationship of themselves.
Right.
And
They
like
need
to
to
some
be
extent,
important in a group to be important with themselves.
yeah. And like I get how pragmatically like this works, but like also more pragmatically, like you don't need the group, to think you have value in order for you to have value.
Right. In fact, it's almost psychologically healthy to have a strong, healthy ego that's like, I'm great.
Yeah.
And then when you're in groups, modulate it a bit so that you fit in.
Yeah.
But to yourself, still believe that you're great.
Yeah. And I think that's the main thing, like is for you to recognize that you have value. And maybe you don't know what that value is yet, but you're a human being and that's valuable in of itself.
Value to yourself as well. Like,
well, I think that then that's the next step is like once you acknowledge that you're valuable, then you can start to see how you're valuable, at least to yourself, and like that causes like a positive spiral. Because if you help yourself, then you're helping a person. If you're helping a person, then you're a good person. And so you just got to be careful with this because you can get into narcissism if you're not paying attention to other people as well. Because also other people count as well, and that needs to be taken into consideration.
So with the journey of identity that I described, there is one mistake that I didn't explicitly name that's right in the middle there of the reification of the label. Like when I get the label, then I will have something that I don't currently have.
You know? Right. And that is true, but it's not
it's flaky. It's true, but a lot thinner than people realize.
Yeah.
So they're like, if only I can get my diagnosis, then I can, well, it happens to be with ADHD, you can get medication, but with other conditions.
Right. And that's true. And then the medication is going to have effect. And that part's true. But if you're looking but there are things you can do even that aren't medication. And if you don't have ADD and you have trouble concentrating, you can still use the techniques.
Right. So there's a belief that the label itself,
there's no law saying you can't use
having the label and like having a rightful sort of like a permission to use the label will somehow be the thing that solves my problems.
Yeah.
And there's a mistake there in that, like, if only I could get the label properly assigned to myself, if only I could get the condition that I have, I'm in pain or something. It's one of those chronic fatigue sort of things. And we don't really know what it is. If only I had the label assigned to me effectively, then I could resolve the condition.
Right.
And there's like a frustration in me that like, no, that's not how it works. Once you have a label, you're still where you are with the condition. You just have a label.
You're still where you are. It's just called something different, right?
Right. And the same goes for like, if you want to achieve the label of victim, if you're like, I need to be acknowledged as a victim. I'm very angry. I'm very upset about how I've been treated. And I'm going to yell at the system until it says, all right, we recognize that you have been victimized and give you the label. Right. And then you're like, oh no, I'm still angry and upset. I just also have the label victimized.
Right. There. I think it's a bit.
Which different. Is some justification, right? Congratulations, you were right.
Like
you need to still resolve your psychological tension.
Right. There's the psychological tension. I think for that does drop because you're not at odds with your surrounding. And like
Right.
that is another
Right,
big
right.
thing.
Some external validation.
That's a big
is
thing
nice.
about the labels, is if you
Yes.
can label yourself properly, then people will see the label, they'll think you're that, and then they'll interact with you in that way. And then that will, if you are that, then that will actually probably sometimes, I mean, it depends, right? But that
Mm.
often does just make everything smoother.
Maybe, maybe not. Like I said, with the
Sometimes yes,
ADHD
sometimes
style,
no.
sometimes you give someone your ADHD card and they don't make you do something, and other times they're like, but you still have to fill out this form.
No, but there's like a sort of, like for certain things, like for me, like let's say the dyslexia stuff, right? Like,
right.
so there was like, there are like, oh, you have the dyslexia, so therefore like this specific way of doing the thing isn't going to work. We'll do it another way.
So
right?
to check,
So,
are you
like,
formally diagnosed or just informally?
yeah,
Okay,
no,
formally diagnosed with
I took a
dyslexia.
whole test.
Right,
Everything.
right, right.
Um,
You took a whole test, all the letters were backwards, and then they were like, congratulations, you now have dyslexia. You were like, I know that. I knew that already.
well, I didn't know that already. So that's the thing, is
Right.
I didn't know that, right? So for me, I
Interesting.
was in a world where I'm somehow smart and dumb at the same time. And that's
Very confusing, I'm sure.
that's very queer. Yeah. Like it's very, it's the whole world doesn't fit.
Right. And so
but
then you had the label and then it fit a bit more.
yeah, like they didn't explain it properly. Like now that I understand it, it's actually, oh, like that's just how things are. I'm both the dumbest and smartest person that most people know. So like for me, it feels very normal, because every time I talk to someone, I'm both like probably smarter than them and probably dumber than them.
Interesting.
By probably, I mean like, yeah. So it's very disconcerting, but it's like as I get used to it, it's like it's less like the world's less random.
Right.
Because it's still random, it's still the same amount of randomness, but it's like it's this slice of randomness instead of everything is random. There's like a slice of randomness that this thing happens and I don't know, and there's a slice within that's just, I literally don't know, like it's just blind to me, and it probably always will be. And
right.
Sometimes
so I have a proposal that you've still got the post dyslexia label journey to go on. Like you've got to get to the place where you still have these things and you have to work through it. Like you've got to the label and you're like, cool, label.
Because, yeah, and I like, because like I can't, like no one has like gone into my experience and been like, this thing that this phenomenology that you're experiencing, this is dyslexia.
And then here's how to fix it. No one's told you that either.
Even if they didn't tell me how to fix it, it would be like just much more contained. But yeah, the fixing it would be nice. Yeah. But yeah, but what I'm saying is, forget the fixing, like, because we're just talking about identity right now, right? So even just being able to identify it and be like, this is what's happening, is like for me also, like when I got like depression and like I accepted that I was going through depression, everything got better even though nothing got better. Because
right, so there's something of identity that is a letting go of the belief that it's not the case. So when I'm depressed, I'm busy saying I'm not really depressed. It's not depression. And then suddenly
it's not that I'm fighting it. It's just like I don't know what's going on. It's like it's not that I don't know what's going on. It's that I know what's going on, but it's like not like it's just not helpful. Like the things I knew what were happening when I was depressed were just like, looking back at it, that's just the depression lies to you, right? Like, or the rumination, things like that, right? Where it's like we could sit and argue about whether it's true or not true, this and that, but it doesn't matter, because I'm depressed and that's the thing I should be dealing with.
Right.
And so then when I got the diagnosis and then they like explained it to me, and also, you don't believe them, but then when you see other people that are also going through it, and you read about stuff or whatever, and you're like, okay, well, maybe I believe it, maybe I don't believe it, but this really explains a lot. And so whether or not I'm truly depressed, and what does that mean to be really depressed? I'm going to take that label and I'm going to do those things because that's going to make my life better. And at this point, I don't even care if they're right or not, or if I'm really depressed or not, because I just want to get better. And so I take on that diagnosis because it helps me get, like, I take on that label because it helped me get better. And I think that's what depression is. Depression is, are you taking on this label? Right. It's the same thing with like addicts, right? Where like, what is a real addict? What does it mean to really be an addict? You're an addict when you admit you're an addict. And
or when you, well, clinical
yeah, it depends.
definition
It depends
is,
who's doing it, right? Like there's a clinical diagnosis and there's a
broadly, the clinical
autonomous.
diagnosis is, does the phenomena affect your life badly enough that you can't function as a normal human? So is your ADHD bad enough that you cannot work?
I don't think that's.
Is your insomnia bad enough that you aren't waking up to get to the office? You know, is your anorexia bad enough that you are passing out?
Well, yeah. So there's criteria. There's criterion and stuff for that. But
right.
like,
but in each of those cases, it's, is the condition bad enough that your life is no longer functional? That's the basic.
Well, it's not no longer
clinical.
There's like thresholds and stuff.
Right. Threshold for functionality. Threshold for like insomnia. You can be an insomniac and just work at night and sleep during the day and like muck around with your sleep all you like. But as soon as you're dysfunctional in life, that's when it becomes necessary to get a diagnosis and start dealing with it. And who hasn't had a night where they have slept badly?
I think I think you're going for like a psychological frame, like let's call it like a Western psychology framework.
Yeah, like clinical standards of limits as to whether something's bad enough.
So you got the DSM, let's say in North America, you got the DSM, and that has like criterion for, are you here or not? That is a framework and that is a way of identifying people. And then on the other hand, you have like Alcoholics Anonymous, which use a different definition of. Right.
That's a social sort of, I admit I am a.
So that's more of a.
We like, admit that we are powerless to control ourselves from drinking or something like that.
Yeah. And that's an orientation towards getting better versus like the psychology is an orientation towards like diagnoses or something. Like there's a whole bunch of, that's the thing, is like the psychology has a whole bunch of, like they have a whole bunch of incentive structures and what's going on with them, which I'm not saying is good or bad. Like I'm just saying it's a different world than, let's say, an AA meeting, because they're just looking at like there's like the phenomenology may be the same, but because their orientation is different, and I say because their orientation is different, where they're going to draw the line and how they're going to start the identification process is going to be different. And also like colloquially, like even if you have like we can say like socially, there's a like a definition of addiction that's not the AA, like this AA kind of or like no, I don't mean like specifically AA, but I mean like that kind of stuff, or a psychology. It's like, you know, it's different. And I think that's also where I think that's part of also what makes identity so confusing, is that how you identify or when you identify or what the identity is, like it just changes. Like you can use the same words, and if you walk into a different room, it means something different. And I think a lot of times people they're in one room, and then that makes sense. Like when I was with my friend, we were in that room and it made sense for her to label me and for me to accept that label. And also now I'm, you know, like I'm still not sure that that label makes sense for me outside that room. Because I also don't have I don't have a strong queer ego yet.
Right. So I'm like back to identity, like thinking about like the shape of what is identity and how do we relate to it. And so I was going to say that sometimes an identity is a dropping back into, like to accept I have a depression is to accept that now I have to be working on it. And it's good and it's nice to drop into and then start working on it. But then there's also the identity of appealing to. And I have a friend who did this, appealing to, I am a fit person. and they started from the identity of I'm a fit person, and then they back propagated from, because I'm a fit person, that means that I must be exercising every day because that's what fit people do. And then this was,
Are they a fit person, or is this like, are they
they
just
are
sort of?
now, after 200 days of sticking to the commitment to being a person who exercises daily. They are
Okay.
now, but when they started, they weren't exercising daily.
They weren't exercising daily, but I guess they
Right.
were, like they identified, like they saw themselves as a fit
No,
person.
they desired to take on this identity, and in moving towards it, they um in moving towards that identity, they then could get themselves to do the various actions needed
Yeah,
to
like
do
I
so.
think that's totally reasonable.
Hmm.
If they're already fit, and like if they're fit now and they're in this regimen and they see the world the way fit people see the world, and they, let's say agent arena, like they exist in relationships to the
Hmm.
world in the way that fit people do, then they probably could lose the identity of fit person and still be fine.
Yes, now I think they could, but I don't know how long it would have taken. I should ask this person how long it took them to really cement in their identity as a fit person in order to then make it. They probably don't worry about it too much anymore because they just exercise every day.
Right.
But yeah, it's an
Right.
interesting phenomenon to go identity first. Like maybe I'm a
Yeah.
good person first and propagate that.
Yeah. You definitely can do that. I do think you're playing with fire, and I'm not saying not to play with fire, but um, yeah, like you are playing with fire, because if like something didn't fit properly, they could get like a huge like identity dysmorphia or
Right.
something
So I
like
can imagine like I'm a fit person, but I keep injuring myself because turns out some other part of me doesn't want to be a fit person, wants to be a lazy
that.
person.
Yeah,
And
or I'm a
so
fit
I
person,
have
so
this mystery to myself where I keep getting injured and I'm like, why?
yeah, I'm a fit person. I can climb a
I'm an
mountain.
injured fit person. That's a good identity to have. Way better than the fit person who hates themselves all the time because they're always sore because they're overdoing it. Right. I'm a fit person who has to go through a lot of rest because I'm injured.
Well, yeah, if you're injured, yeah.
But
But you gotta be careful also with like injured identities, because those ones might be really good, but then
right.
you want
I'm
you want
disabled.
them to go away as you're injuring
Right.
yourself.
I'm disabled. I always have to park in the disabled, like I have to get provisions. I have to like whatever because
Yeah,
I have to be cared for in various ways because I'm disabled. This is beneficial
yeah,
to
yeah.
maintain
You get like
identity
things like Munchausen and stuff, which
in the extreme, more extreme form. But even in the
yeah, which would be
mild
like the
form,
extreme version of that,
in
yeah.
the mild form, you even get man flu, which is the like,
Man
uh,
flu.
maybe that's a particularly like local cultural phenomena. There's something called
Oh,
man flu, which is
man flu.
yeah,
Oh, Australian culture. I'm very excited.
I guess maybe it's an Australian culture thing, but uh, it's
Man
sort
flu.
of the proposal that when men get sick, they get like, there's sometimes people do this thing where they get extra sick. Men will get like extra sick, and they won't be that sick, but they'll be like complaining that they're
Hamming it up.
terribly sick and that they can't get out of bed and that they need things done for them, and that, but it's like, I had the flu and then I gave it to my man friend and it was mild for me and suddenly he can't get out of bed. I
Right.
kept doing stuff and like went about my day, but so often I think it's called man flu because the woman will have the flu and it'll be fine, and then the man will get it and it'll be have this
Yeah,
completely
so
knocked over man flu type syndrome.
yeah, so this kind of stuff reinforces, or creates or reinforces or constructs or whatever, the like certain like stereotypes, right? Which
Right.
like I'm not like calling you out or anything, but I'm just,
I don't get man flu particularly.
yeah, I'm just saying, like, when, so like that's part of this thing. So it's like man flu, and then so I'm a man and I have the flu, so therefore I must have man flu,
Hmm.
right? Which is
I
like
think
the
it's
first
more
two
of a
can be
complaint.
correct and the third one can be incorrect.
Yeah.
Right,
I
and
think
then someone reverts to, well, no, it's when men get the flu they have man flu, but then it has all these connotations, and let's say I'm not doing those like, let's say I don't want the connotations, I just want the underlying thing. um that would be like sort of like that, those I think are the dangers of identity.
hmm,
And so I think there needs to be like something of like being able to stand up and say, no, I'm a man and I have the flu, and man flu is not a real thing. Like it's
Well,
just
I'll have
people.
it as bad as I end up having it, or
Yeah, or I have
yeah,
it this bad, or whatever, or it is really bad, or or what,
really
like
is
whatever's
bad. Yeah,
going on. This is what's going on, and I don't like your like I don't
you're,
like your
you're like you're lumping me with a negative identity over here.
yeah, yeah. Like I can be a man and have the flu, and you can call it say I have man flu or not, but if you like, I don't know, whatever, like you kind of trap me here, right?
Right.
And I'm not accepting this, even if I can't articulate it properly.
Hmm.
And that's
So I have so identities, right? This is the whole thing we started with. We're exploring identities. There's something of a category of identities for uh scaffolds for how you live, like the stoicism as the identity, or the libertarianism as the identity, or the um I'm a business owner as the identity.
yeah,
Because of that, that gives me an attitude for which to approach the world.
yeah,
Like
yeah. Like I'm libertarian.
I'm an
That
entrepreneur, and
fits
so I
me
make a lot of deals.
sometimes.
Let's make a deal.
Yeah, I love making deals.
Right. But there's a way in which to use an identity to do that, to lean into that. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
whichever
like I
action
can do
takes.
this because I haven't. Yeah. I do find that actually like that is super helpful. Weirdly, where like sometimes I'll be trying to do something and I'm embarrassed to do it. But then if I find an identity, like, oh, it's okay, I can do it because I'm this. It's
Right.
like
Because I'm a
sometimes
fit person, or because I'm
yeah.
fit and therefore I have to go for a walk every day, even if it's raining. So I
Yeah, like
walk.
lifting weights, I think for me was a little like weird at the beginning.
Hmm.
But like but then I'm doing it, I'm like, oh, maybe I'm a gym bro, and then
Yeah.
I can
Now I have this identity. I'm fully
yeah.
justified in all my actions taken in relation to this identity,
Yeah, like as
including
if like
I'm a
yeah,
vegan,
only
and so I
gym
have
bros
to tell
can
you about my veganism.
yeah. Yeah, right. Like it's like, yeah, like it's like if I wanted to order like, not order meat, I'd be like, oh, I need an excuse. Like, why am I getting a salad? Right. Like
Why am I
immediately
modifying the
like
menu? This is going to stress out the waiter. Well, I'm a
yeah.
vegan, and so I have to find
Like,
something
oh,
on
it's
the
okay. I'm
menu.
a vegan. I'm allowed to be
Yeah.
like
Is there
like
anything on this menu that's vegan? What do you mean there's nothing on this menu that's vegan?
yeah, yeah. Like that definitely helps a lot of times where you're like,
To be
yeah.
honest, it's not that hard to make a vegan dish, and every menu should have vegan things on it. But like,
Yeah, French fries are vegan, right?
yeah. And then there's like, is there anything healthy on this menu that's vegan? Like, should be possible to have something vegan on every. Anyway, that's another
Yeah,
journey.
whatever.
But so right, so sometimes identities can give us a scaffold on how to be in the world, or how to interact with the world.
Yeah, they can give us and they like so there's a bunch of things. There's like just on a basic level, there's an excuse, right? Like if I'm a gym bro, then I'm allowed to go to the gym and lift
I
weights.
have to go.
Yeah. But if I'm like a normal person, no, normal people can they lift weights? Like that's weird, right?
Right, I'm not allowed to do that. I'm not
Yeah,
one of
which
those people.
objectively speaking, it's not, right? Like lifting weights is like using your muscles. That's a
Right, and
thing
there's
that
some like, I'm not an engineer. I'm not qualified to make this judgment call.
right, right. Or with us with the psychotechnologists, right? Like I
Right,
feel like I have a lot more space to say things because I'm a psychotechnologist. So
right.
I'm allowed to just do weird things. And this is another thing with the queer is that I have to still figure out what that label is and what it means and everything.
Mhm.
But it does seem that it will afford me a lot more space to be where I want to be.
Mhm.
And then when people call me out on it, I can just be like, oh, it's my identity.
Mhm.
And like it protects me socially because you can't make fun of queers nowadays. It's really bad.
Can't make fun of. Right. Yep. So there's interesting
Queers.
point you make there, that some identities are protected,
Yeah, some identities are protected.
or protected more by certain parts of society than others. For example, if you're
Yeah.
like, I'm a parent, then
Yeah,
that's
I am
like
a parent, right? Like
it's a
that also that
respected or
identity.
protected identity.
Sorry?
It's a respected or protected identity.
Yeah, well, it's
Or
theory,
both.
it's both. Yeah,
Can
as a parent, right? Like so I can like I
as a
used to
mother.
have yeah, as a father, I
I
think
don't
like
know.
as a
I don't know
parent.
if you have this there, but many years ago when I was watching TV, they had the TV ads, which would start with, "As a mother, I am always
Yeah,
worried, blah blah blah," and it was like some cleaning product or something.
yeah, yeah. And so there is something about that where like people used to be able to use like if I would have an opinion on something, oh, you're not a parent, you don't understand. right?
Mm.
And like they would just say that. I'm like, well, like you're right. I'm not a parent, and I don't understand that.
Right.
And um,
There is different epistemic understanding of the world to being a parent and not being a parent. And
yeah, but they're
hopefully,
using it inappropriately. Is
yeah,
what I think.
we're trying to lump a negative identity, right? We're trying to give you a negative when you say, well, you're not a parent. You have the identity of not a parent in a bad
Yeah,
way. And so we've used it in
yeah,
the
that's
wrong way.
interesting. Yeah, because every identity has the corollary of the not.
Mm.
But yeah, as a parent, like now when stuff happens, I can be like, this is my opinion as a parent, which was it's still my opinion. It's just now I'm a parent, so
Now
my
you're
opinion
qualified.
is somehow different. I don't know, like whatever it is, but like yeah, like it does command a certain amount of respect and like
Mm.
space within society. And I
Right.
think queer also does. And as
And
a
so we have to
person
dance with
who,
it, I guess, in society.
yes, yeah, so I have to dance with it, and I have to, the main thing for me is like protecting myself, because like sort of the way I've been talking here, I think people could get upset at me, even like just like based off of our culture.
Because you have
It's like,
negatively associated an identity, or
no, because like I've been a little like I haven't been treating queerness in a sacred way. I'm
oh,
treating it more in like a
whoops.
casual way.
Right.
And so that's not necessarily allowed,
It's okay.
but
Here's what you do. You say, I'm a metamodernist, and this is ironic sincerity. And then you can get away with saying anything in it whenever anyone misinterprets you. You
that
say,
works
well,
for
I meant the
that
other one, the other interpretation. And you're like,
that works for exactly one person. You need to be like I need to have access to the memes that are going to protect me. And so like this meme of me exploring my queerness, my queer side, or me coming to terms with my queer identity is a meme that I now have access to, um, because it seems to be true in this moment.
hmm,
Um, and so I feel like that does protect me. So now I can explore to see if I'm queer or not.
sure.
Because yeah, and I don't
And if
have
you
to.
want to operate from the identity of queerness in the world to navigate better or something.
Right. Well, so I have to know what that means more, I think. Like that's the thing to me. That I think that's my main blockage. I don't really know what it means. That's the thing. Like in the moment, I knew what it meant. Like we were there,
Yeah.
and in the space, in that frame, it was like it fit uncomfortably.
The difficulty with making conclusions when you are high.
Yeah.
Because you're like this fuzzy cloud, and then other things are fuzzy clouds, and the two fuzzy clouds look like they fit. And then as you
No. The thing is, the fuzzy clouds. No, because when I'm high, I still do grounded. I do ground stuff and checking in and seeing where I'm at, right? Because that's how you get the best high. Is like you be present with the high, and um, and like it felt real, like it was real and it was there. But I don't think it was necessarily just because of the high. I think like she was able to like create that space where this made sense. And yeah, like that's something I really want more of. And I want to be able to generate that as a psychotechnologist. I want to
Fair
be able
enough.
to generate that like as a psychotechnologist. Like I want to do this. Like this is what I want. This is interesting to me. This is important to me. Like I want to be able to to like have a better understanding and embodiment of that space. And I don't know what my point was. But yeah. And so like being able to explore it is part of that, and treating it as sacred, but not sacred, like a different kind of sacred.
Right. So from a psychotechnology perspective, we want to be able to operate spaces that support ideologies that enable them to flesh out and become real, and then
Yeah.
also enable them to later, when they're ready, to dissolve and
Right.
to deepen into.
Right.
We want this like flow through of
right.
as needed identities can form, and as needed they can
like they can come into existence, and they can come in also not completely formed is the important one.
Right.
Where like, yeah, when you're exploring this, like you're going to say things that are offensive. like I for sure said things that were offensive there, and she for sure said things were offensive, but it didn't matter because we were like we were saying, like when she's putting the label on me, like that's a social taboo, but it made sense in the moment, and I'm very grateful that she was brave enough to actually do that.
To propose, right?
Yeah, and to actually like, and
Uh,
then I did fight it at the beginning, and you know, she
like to
like it wasn't like a
postulate,
fight, but huh?
to propose such a thing is the
It
case.
wasn't just a postulation. It wasn't just like, oh, hey, what about this idea? It was like a little more like, I think this is what you are. And then I'm like, no, because of this. And they're like, no, and this. I'm like, you know, it was like a little bit of that. And because you know, like I like, you know, I guess my immune system was saying no to this. But but like I'm in after the fact, like I'm very grateful. And even in the moment, I was very grateful that I was able to do that. And she took a risk and it could have gone the other way. And I
Hmm.
think that you need to not punish people so much for
Oh,
taking
absolutely.
risks. Hmm?
Yes, fair enough. Hmm. I'm aware of the time, and maybe it's good to wrap up an
Yeah, I
exploration
still
of
want to do
identity.
identity for you. Like, do you have like
Oh, for
how are
me,
you settling into identity? How are you identifying with identity?
right. So talking about it here has made me consider the benefits, so that you may gain respect or uh, there's another
Recognition.
word, recognition as part of an
Yeah, yeah.
identity. That's one, and then there was action taking, as like certain identities are then able to take certain actions, like you're the life of the party, and so no matter which party you go to, your job is to be the life of the party as
Right,
an
right, right.
identity, and so it becomes very easy to lean in towards generating the life of the party as an identity. And so I'm thinking about that in terms of trying out identities for action taking, and considering the other benefits, bearing in mind that I have this allergy to identity, and obviously the allergy to the negative side of identity, being trapped in a box or being some way limited, or the uselessness of having a label when you still have to address the problem after. And so I'm balancing the negative side of identity, of the uselessness and those things, with the positive possibility of an identity that I'm now um, considering and contemplating. Well, if I try be a psychotechnologist, then I
Do you
have
have that
powers.
as an identity?
Uh,
You identify as a psychotechnologist?
so there's this tricky thing of like, what do I actually have as my identity? Now, I do have a gender and I do have a gender expression, but I don't think I contemplate that. Like, I don't remember most days. Do I think, oh, I'm a man, and therefore dot dot dot. And so it's there, but it's like implicit. Um, uh, I would say that I keep very few identities up front on the surface of my being. Um,
So
and this
which
is
one, which like what identity like do you keep up front? Or like what I yeah, like because for me, I'd like to end this episode
mm,
with you like having a or like having a different relationship with identity or something, or
yeah.
having an identity or something like that.
Well, I came in here with an exploration, and I have found there is some positive possibility worth exploring. Um, and so that has changed a little bit. But yeah, the identities that I do hold, um, I hold some like relational identities relating to the people around me. I am this person in relation to the people around me, like my family and my
Like
partner.
let's say when no one's around, I think, or either when no one's around or when it's like
Right.
new people, like people you don't know, or just the general world, or something that's common across all of them, and like
Right.
not purely not in relation to like a single person.
So if I take the other people out of the equation, right? The social relationships, they're like I'm a family member of this family. That those ones I just take them out. Um, if I take all my possessions away, right? Because I own certain things and I don't own certain other things. And so there's potentially identities relating to I don't drive a fancy car, but I could drive a fancier car and that sort of thing. So there's a bunch of those, but if I take those away, um, me myself, like when I'm by myself, when I sit and I meditate, uh, I don't think of myself as having much of an identity, any of it, any identities. I'm not even a meditator.
Wow, you're so enlightened.
No, well, it's just maybe I don't dwell on it,
Just teasing. I should have done that.
but I do the meditating, or maybe I read some books from time to
The
time.
meditation happens, or the experience in and of itself.
Uh I sort of it's a branching path of actions that I take, and then I end up meditating. So
Okay.
maybe I read things on my phone for a bit. Maybe I decide I want to meditate. Maybe I
Okay, but let's see if we can get you an identity. Maybe your identity.
I don't know if I need identities. Remember, I'm allergic to them. So
Okay, so
it,
that's maybe that's your identity, is that
no,
you're a person
well,
that's allergic to identities.
being allergic to an
You don't have to. I
identity
don't want to
feels
pressure
like a
you.
process more than an identity. Like that,
Well, but it's who
like
you are.
you said to me, like, oh look, the queer identity, and I went, huh. Like I noticed I was surprised myself just how much I was allergic to it, and so been playing with for a few days now. I guess the identity of being allergic to identity. But I don't see that one as sticking.
Yeah, it doesn't have to stick.
There was
It's
one
just
that stuck for a while. Something like
I think identity shouldn't stick forever.
the universe in karmic balance. That one stuck to me for a while, and then it was okay until I kind of got annoyed that I was kind of stuck where I was in the good way and in the bad way of karmic balance, and so that one sort of fell away. I don't think it's done yet, but
Okay. Okay, so right now you seems like you're in the identity of being allergic to identities, and you suspect that that will like cancel itself out soon.
well, so what I am curious about is the possibility of experimenting with, if I lean into identities, if I try them on, do I there's something interesting to me in doing so. So I don't know what that interestingness is, but I'm going to move towards it. And then as I do, I will find if I like it or not. And obviously I've got the allergy thing, and so I'm gonna have to put that to the side of it while I try on an identity to give it a fair go. And then
I don't think that's the right. I don't think that's a, because if you put it to the side, you're not really trying.
a little bit.
You're not trying it on. It's more, I think, like accept that you're allergic and try it on anyway and see what happens.
Yeah, there's gonna be a smart way to do the allergy thing in order to actually go give this identity a fair go, get closer to it, enjoy what it is like to be in it.
I think because like you don't have to go all the way, right?
Yeah. Well,
you could be like, I'm exploring this identity, or I'm
sure.
seeing, I'm like this for me. That's what I'm doing with the queer is like in the moment I accepted it, and when I'm with her, I probably will accept it because that's like she creates that environment. But
right.
Like outside, I'm going much slower and exploring it and seeing what's like, seeing if it fits, seeing what it means. You know, it's like, yeah. So maybe you could try that.
So there's going to be some form of trying, some form of testing out, and hopefully finding the good and leaving the bad where it was. Like identities obviously have downsides, as we've talked about.
Yeah.
But
it's like clothes, right? Like you don't want to wear the same shirt every, like you don't want to be stuck with a shirt on, but you don't want to, and you don't want to you want to know that you're not your clothes. Like your skin is very different than your clothes, but also you want to wear clothes sometimes.
Right. So this will be an interesting next couple of days while I fiddle with identities, or I listen carefully for identities, or I try them on a bit here and there.
Yeah.
It becomes a dance, hopefully.
Cool to see what happens, because I'm doing identity. Like
yeah. I will have to report. I will report back if I find interesting things.
Yeah, we could talk about this again in the future. Like, what is it? What's our journey of exploring and trying new identities like?
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah. Psychotechnologies live.
Psychotechnologies live. Woo!